When you hear the word boundaries, what comes to mind? For many, many women, when we hear the word boundaries, we feel guilt, we feel conflict, we might feel shame, we feel like we're disappointing people, and we just think that the word boundary equates to saying no. And boy, is that hard. It's a hard word for us to say, and it's a hard thing for us to do sometimes. We feel like boundaries are like walls that we build. I think of the castle with the walls and the moat and, the drawbridge, and they're meant to keep people out. And so that is how I view boundaries for much of my life. And so when I heard the word boundary, growing up, it was like the hard no. It was the rules that had to be enforced or that were being enforced and being imposed upon me. And so boundaries became this like ick that I didn't really like. But I'd like for us to kind of like turn this around, and I'd like to pose this question. What if boundaries are a lot simpler than that? What if we don't have to look at them in that way? What if they are simply an outward expression of an internal alignment? Today, I think that we just have many women have this negative relationship with boundaries, and I'd like to turn that on its head. And I'd like to explore why healthy boundaries don't begin by saying no to others. That's what we equate them with. But a healthy boundary actually begins by saying yes to ourselves. And it begins by saying yes to the things that matter most to us. Last month, we learned all about awareness. We learned about what it means to notice the things that are off and how when things feel off, then we know that we recognize that we're not in alignment. This month we've been learning about how to come back into alignment and how to come back into agreement with ourselves. We talked about returning. We talked about listening to this beautiful body that God gave us. We talked about making small aligned decisions. And eventually, when we're in alignment, it becomes visible. And one of the first places that alignment in our lives show up visibly to others is when we begin creating boundaries. Boundaries reflect what's going on inside of us. And boundaries can be something that can appear negatively, and it can be something that appears positively. They can have a negative connotation and a positive connotation towards others and towards ourselves. And so when we have alignment with ourselves and we begin to set healthy boundaries, people notice. But here's the thing I want to start with. Boundaries protect what God has entrusted to us, to you, to me. We think that boundaries are that wall that keeps people out. And yes, that is one thing. A wall around a castle is meant to keep the bad guys out, but it's not meant to keep everybody out. There are people that are allowed inside the bounds of the city. Healthy boundaries, really, they're meant to protect what's valuable. So think about the castle and the wall example. When the, inside the walls of the castle is the castle. It's the people, it's the belongings inside the castle. It's all those things that need to be, it's the treasures. It's all the things that need to be protected from the enemy. But what if we look at boundaries and from a healthy standpoint as something that protects our peace, protects our time, protects our energy, protects our calling, protects our relationships, and even protects our health? Here's another example I like to use, and I use this a lot. If I'm in a car driving down the road and I'm going through a small town, that speed limit is going to be 25, 35 miles an hour. If I'm on the highway, the speed limit might be 55 or even 70 miles an hour. The lines on the side of the road tell me where I can cross and can't cross, where I can, change lanes or not. There's signs that tell me where to go and how fast to go. Back in the day when cars were first created, I remember seeing those black and white films when people were just crashing into each other because there was no rules, there was no boundaries. The boundaries that we call the laws of the road, they're meant to keep us safe. It's protecting what's valuable, which is our car and the bodies inside the car, right? So the boundaries that we set within our lives are the peace and the time that we're protecting our energy. It's meant to keep safe the things that are valuable to us. In functional medicine, I often teach my patients that healing comes by removing the things that are harmful. It's, especially when I'm working through a gut system, we go through the 5 R's. And the first thing that we start with is removing the things that are harmful, whether it's foods that we're reacting to or unhealthy foods. It could be removing pathogens, things that are creating imbalance in the body. And we can take wonderful supplements and we can eat beautiful, nourishing food. We can support the detox pathways. We can reduce inflammation and we can do all those things. But say someone comes to me and they're having symptoms and I discover that they are living in a moldy home. If they don't remove themselves from the mold or remove the mold from the home, or if they keep eating the food that their body is reacting negatively to, or if they keep living in this unrelenting stress, this unaddressed stressful situation, whether it's job, relationship, or just they don't ever stop going and moving, then all of those things, if we don't remove those things, are all going to affect their ability to heal and get well. Healing becomes so much more difficult when we don't remove those things. So sometimes the progress that I see with patients doesn't come because I give them another supplement to take or give them another thing to do. Sometimes it comes by removing the things that are continually causing that particular individual harm. And it's always personalized, it's always individualized. Boundaries work in the same way. They don't just add health. They remove unnecessary depletion. They remove those things in our lives that are really just draining valuable things from us. They're part of creating an environment where healing can actually begin. And that's stewardship, right? Stewardship it's just one of my favorite words recently. Like in the last, I would say, a couple of months, I've been meditating a lot about what it means to be a good steward of my home, of my finances, of my health, of my body. And stewardship requires boundaries. It requires us to start looking at the things that are entrusted to us and looking at how we can care for them beautifully and responsibly and to the best of our ability, because we naturally protect the things we value. I don't take all the money that I earn and just throw it out in the middle of the street for the wind to carry it away. No, I put it in the bank, or I put it into a money market account, or I invest it in, precious metals, or whatever I do with it. It's stewardship. I didn't buy my house so that I could, let the grass grow as tall as the trees and, never keep it clean and never take care of it and let it burn to the ground. I wouldn't do that. Or nor would I leave the doors open for anybody to come in and steal the things that are on the inside of it. No, I steward it. I protect it because it's valuable to me. So, why would we steward our finances or our homes, but not steward our energy? And why would we protect our home, but then we neglect our peace and we don't protect our peace? So, when we think about boundaries, part of the stewardship is that we have to realize that every yes also has a corresponding no. Every yes costs us something. Now, it could be a yes that costs something that we choose to give, and we are consciously choosing to make that trade. But every yes has an opposing no. So every time we say yes, it might cost us our time. It might cost us our attention. It might cost us our energy or our capacity because we choose to give that thing. But every no also creates space. So what you have to ask yourself then is, when I'm saying yes, what am I actually saying yes to? And what does the yes then require a no to? What am I saying no to when I say yes? Sometimes saying yes to everyone else and everything else means then that I'm saying no to my health, or no to my family, or no to my rest, or even my relationship with the Lord. And so our boundaries help to protect, but they also help to clarify our priorities. So when we think about our boundaries and the things that we're saying yes to and the things that we're saying no to, there's a lot of clarity that comes when we have an honest look and say, okay, these are the things that are important to me. I'm going to protect those, and I'm going to make sure that my yes and my no clarify the boundaries and clarify the boundary, set the boundary to clarify the priorities in my life. I think another beautiful thing that boundaries do is that they flow from what's inside of us. They flow and are an overflow of our identity. They don't, they should not flow from fear. So, if I'm allowing a boundary to flow from fear, what I'm really saying is, what if they don't like me? What if they're disappointed in me? What if I let them down? Then I make my choice based on that fear. And is that really the place that I want to live from? Is that the place that I believe is the best, most healthy place for me to live from? What if instead of setting a boundary, or making a yes or a no statement based on fear and what other people will think, or, you know, have it be something that's based out of shame? What if instead I make a statement and make a choice based on alignment? Because alignment will say, it'll ask the question of myself, what is actually mine to carry? Boundaries will become much, much easier as our identity becomes clearer, right? If we know who we are and we know what we value and we know then what our priorities are, the boundaries will overflow from the identity that we hold. And it's much easier, much healthier place to set boundaries based on our identity. Jesus was an amazing, beautiful example of this. He was God in flesh, walking on the earth, and he just lived his life with such a beautiful example for us. But you know what? He had boundaries. He did. He said no. He withdrew. He went away. There's different places throughout scripture where it talks about Jesus withdrew to pray. He went up into the mountain to pray. He went into the desert. He was asleep on the boat. He withdrew. He rested. And he didn't say yes to every single thing. He actually didn't even heal every single person in Israel. He healed the people that came to him. He did not heal the entire country. He wasn't driven by every demand placed upon him. Instead, he was motivated and moved by love, and he was led by his Father. The scripture says that he heard his Father's voice, he knew it, and he followed it. And that is our model. He was our model. His boundaries and our boundaries weren't selfish, or our boundaries should not be selfish. His were never selfish. He was the most unselfish person who literally gave his life for us. Boundaries are not selfish. They are part of faithful stewardship. And stewardship, I just love the word. I just love the concept. It's something that the Lord has been working in me to steward the things well that he has entrusted to me, whether it's my time, my finances, my health, whatever. So part of stewardship for me, and I would challenge you, maybe here's some things that you could do for yourself. What if it's not answering emails after a certain time of the day, or even answering the phone, like letting it go to voicemail and not answering every single phone call that comes through or every single text as soon as it hits your phone? If you choose to do that, it's because you have been intentional about it, not because you're avoiding something, but because you've set an intentional boundary to protect your time. For me, I time block because I get so much more done when I protect certain blocks of time to be able to work, and so I can flow in creativity and get a lot more accomplished. Another thing I do, and you've heard me say it before, is I protect my Sabbath. Saturday is my Sabbath. It is hands down my day of rest. If I choose to go and do something, it's my choice. But if I choose to stay home in my PJs all day, totally my choice too, because I'm honoring my day of rest, whatever's going to fill my tank on that day. It's also scheduling margin in my week. So I have built myself a sacred blueprint. It's how I've arranged my schedule from week to week, day to day, and even hour by hour, so that I can steward well the callings and the giftings and my work and the things that I have that God has placed on my heart to do. And so it's scheduling margin. It's not moving from one appointment to the other and having to be like having such a full schedule that I never have time to breathe or rest or, go to the bathroom or eat my lunch. It's saying, let me think about that before I just give a yes or give a no. I learned this well when my kids were little. I wanted them to trust my yes and my no. And so when they would come to me with something, if I knew it was a yes, then easy. And if I knew it was a no, that was easy. But if I wasn't sure, I would say, let me think about it, or maybe, or we'll see. Something that allowed room for margin rather than me giving them a solid answer, because I wanted to make sure that my yes was yes and my no was no, and I meant what I said. And I've learned to do that then for myself so that I don't say yes when I really meant to say no, or vice versa. It's things like leaving time for prayer in the beginning of my day, and time for prayer at the end of my day, and little moments of prayer throughout the day. It's declining commitments that don't align with the season in my life. It's choosing rest instead of productivity. I can't tell you, my to-do list is long. My list of projects, with my annual goals and quarterly goals, I have a project list as long as my arm. And there are days that I could, mentally say, I'm just going to keep working. And then there are days that I set for myself a solid, this is the end of my day. It ends here. And I don't move past that day or past that time in the day. When my kids were little, it was family dinner. I made sure that we sat down every day for dinner together as a family. I don't do that now because all my kids are grown. But when my kids were little, it was super important. We spent time together, even if it was just for a half an hour at the table together talking about our day. And then the other thing that I've learned to do is just say yes a little bit more slowly. Because boundaries, they're not punishment. Boundaries are wisdom. It's wisdom to say, this is where I stand and this is where I draw the line in the sand. It's wisdom if it protects the things that are valuable. It's not rejection, it's stewardship. And it's not about controlling others or being a hard nose. It's about taking responsibility for the things that God has entrusted us with. Healthy boundaries allow us to love and love well and allow those relationships to remain healthy because we love the person and we care about the relationship. And it creates more room for peace in our lives. So, as we've been talking, some questions that you might want to consider. Take a piece of paper, pull out your journal, run through your head. Think about these. Where have I been saying yes too quickly? And what am I protecting well? What have I failed to protect? What drains me unnecessarily? And what deserves more margin? Where is God inviting me to have healthier boundaries? And what one boundary, one boundary, what one boundary would create more peace for me in this season? If these conversations have helped you recognize areas in your life where you feel like maybe things are out of alignment, I would invite you to take my alignment check. It's a simple, reflective questionnaire that's designed to help you notice the patterns in your life and begin living from a place of greater peace and clarity and purpose and wholeness. You'll find the link below. Remember, boundaries are not built overnight. They grow the same way that alignment grows. They begin with one conversation, one decision, one honest no, and one courageous yes, one faithful act of stewardship. You don't have to become hard and hard nosed and callous to be healthy and hold a healthy boundary. You simply have to have more clarity and know who you are, know what your identity is, because clarity protects what confusion often sacrifices. And healthy boundaries are one of the most beautiful things and one of the most beautiful fruits of a life that is learning to live from a place of alignment. If this has blessed you this week, then I invite you to continue on the journey. Next month, we're going to be talking a little bit about a different subject as we continue our conversation and explore what alignment looks like. And so I invite you and I hope to see you on the next step in our journey. I'll see you next week.